Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the ICA Trade Event 2022. We're particularly excited to welcome you all back because this is the first time we've been together for 3 years. But to start with the Cotton Connected session, I would like to just say a couple of words to you about an application called Slido that is available to you to ask questions if you wish. Ian has just put up a QR code on the screens, and if you take a picture of that QR code, it will take you directly to an app called Slido, and you may submit your questions to the panel or any of the future panels in the sessions today using this app. I hope you find it very simple and intuitive, but if you prefer to use an old-fashioned method, you can stand up and ask a question at the end of the presentation in the normal way. So, as we just allow the last few joiners to come and take their seat, it's a delight to see you all. Thank you for joining us. And the first session today is a regional session on the Australian cotton industry, and I'm going to hand over to one of the ICA's directors, Eimear McDonagh. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this early session. I'm sure a lot of you only arrived yesterday, so hopefully we don't have too many jet-lagged people in the audience. And anybody who attended the Women in Cotton event last night, I feel your pain, so thank you for turning up this morning. I want to introduce the panel to you today. We have Cliff White from Omnicotton and Arthur Spellson from ADM. We're going to talk to you about what is happening in Australia today, the changes that we're experiencing with large crop sizes, the weather pattern changes, and what that's doing to our crop. So without further ado, we do have a lot of slides and some video. So initially what we're going to do is just show you a video that gives you an overview of the Australian cotton industry. Oops. And I knew I would do that. hope you enjoyed that brief introduction to planting, growing, harvesting and shipping our crop. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about who we are, how the Australian industry is currently operating, a seasonal update and a forecast for where we think we're going for the future, and some key issues that we're facing in Australia. Australian cotton has 4 key governing bodies, if you like, or industry bodies that make up the brand of Australian cotton. And research and science are 2 of our key, the key elements to the success of our industry. The Cotton Research and Development Corporation provides a lot of it takes the feedback from industry on where we need to be as a sustainable industry. And we give feedback from the Cotton Shippers Association on what markets want, and it goes back to the CRDC and to CSIRO in order to improve the, whether it be the quality or whether it be the sustainability traits or whatever it is that we know that the market needs. So research is a key component of the sustainability and the fundamentals of our industry, as is CSIRO. So CSIRO is basically the Commonwealth Science Information Research Organisation, and they're responsible for developing the seed varieties with the quality attributes that we are so proud of in Australia, and continuing to improve those year on year. Cotton Australia is the peak body for cotton growers in Australia, and ACSA, the Aussie ACSA, is the Australian Cotton Shippers Association, and together we make up Australian cotton. These are the merchants that are currently trading Australian cotton. Growers have lots of competition in the market, and these merchants bring the cotton to market. For those of you who haven't been to Australia, cotton is primarily grown on the southeastern areas of Australia, Queensland and New South Wales. There are 12 major cotton production areas. They're primarily focused around the riverine systems in that region, 66% in New South Wales and 33% in Queensland. We have 38 gins in Australia, but we also have expansion in the northern part of Australia. The biggest limiting factor to growing cotton in Australia is water. So farmers are ultimately innovative. They get very little support in the way of funding or grants, so they have to go and find the most optimal location to grow cotton. So we're seeing cotton growers move from these southern areas into the northern parts of Western Queensland and into the Territory, so in the Darwin region and Western Australia. So they're very tropical areas. The climate is quite different to these southern growing regions, but they're able to develop. We're actually growing a crop probably over 120,000 bales currently in those 3 new areas combined. So that's a big expansion for the Australian cotton industry. Obviously, it comes with its issues around logistics. We have 2 new gins planned there in the next 24 months. And then we're also looking at the potential to export from the port of Darwin, which is very close to the transit port of Singapore or Port Kelang. So again, expansion, growth, and expanding on using the seed varieties that we have and managing the crop production in areas that would not normally grow cotton. So when we do that, we can actually grow cotton almost in a 12-month cycle. So we can grow from April through, we can plant in September, October, November, December in the southern areas, and then we can produce a later crop in the northern areas. So we're trying to produce a year-round crop throughout the areas where we have water in Australia. Australia is primarily made up of family farms. We have over 1,500 cotton families in Australia, and 90% of our cotton comes from family farms. So that represents 80% of the crop. So even though we know that there's a lot of corporate investment in our farming areas, the farming families really make up the majority of what we produce in Australia. And that's critical to when we come to the social issues around what do those families do in regional Australia, because this cotton crop that we grow it really underpins the economic viability of the regional areas in Australia. And in a lot of cases, if you're growing cotton, there's not a lot of option to grow something else. So you're fully geared up to grow cotton. So what we have, the sustainability framework in Australia is people, planet and paddock. That's our focus throughout the industry. And it pays attention to the sustainability requirements. And we're not talking about sustainability necessarily in the way everybody sees it, but what it costs, what it takes for us to stay in business right throughout the sector, whether it be on a regional farm in Western New South Wales, or whether it be a gin or a merchant. What is sustainable to actually continue to stay in business? So people, planet, paddock is our framework and our path to continue in business in Australia. And in a way, it's probably becoming more of a social license to operate as well. I'm going to hand over now to Arthur, who's going to give us a seasonal update and a forecast on where we're going.
Thank you, Eimear. Thanks for having me. Great to be back. Been a while since we've all travelled, and it's really good to be here. So I'm just going to, as Eimear said, give a bit of an update of what's happening in terms of production. So we've seen an amazing rebound in production in Australian cotton, where back in 2019 we were impacted by our worst drought on record, and as an industry we only produced around 600,000 bales, or just about 120,000 metric tonne. So that was a really difficult time for all of us in the industry. Most of us survived, which is good. And then we've had this amazing rebound where we moved into this La Nina weather pattern, which we're still in, and it started to rain, and we've gone from a record low crop to a record high crop in 2022, which we're still ginning now. So generally, you'd expect Australia to be well and truly finished ginning by now, but we're still ginning the 2022 crop, and that crop is expected to be somewhere in the vicinity of about 1.2 to 1.3 metric tonnes. So up in old language, or the other language, is close to 6 million bales. So it's been a huge rebound. This gives it a little bit more clearly. So we had relatively, or had smaller crops back in 2019 and 20, and then we've had this rebound through to 22. And in terms of the 23 crop and where we're going with the size of the crop, there was the expectation that we would set an even larger record next year, but we're facing some challenges with weather at the moment, and Cliff's going to touch on that in a little while in terms of some of the challenges we're facing with flooding. So it's amazing. So I don't know whether you guys believe in climate change, but it's pretty hard to doubt when you look at what's going on in Australia at the moment with the amount of rain we're having. It's just incredible. So as an industry, we've had an ongoing commitment to quality. As Eimear said, we're not heavily supported by government. We don't have subsidies. So we keep ourselves in business by producing a product which the market demands. And this year hasn't been any different. We did have the challenge of rain. As I said, it's been a wet period. So our grade wasn't up to the normal expectations that we have. We did have quite a substantial amount of our cotton that was rain affected at harvest, and we had in the vicinity of 40% of the crop that was below a middling grade, which is very abnormal for us. Usually we would normally only have about 5% of the crop that would be below a middling. So this year it was around 60% of the crop was a middling grade and better, and only around 20% was a strict middling grade. And long-term average is that over 60% of the crop is strict middling and better. So the rain, while we want it and it gives us the big crops, it does present challenges when it comes to grade. But what's encouraging is that even though we did have that rain, and it's tough growing cotton in a La Nina, essentially it's, if we've got the water, if we've got the irrigation water, we want hot, dry summers. But what La Nina's presented us with is more mild summers and wetter summers. So it's been a harder period to grow the crop. But what's encouraging is we've maintained our excellent intrinsic characteristics of the cotton. So the staple, still more than 90% of the crop was 37 and better length, and then you look right up in the premium, we've got nearly 40% of the crop that's 39 and 40 staple. So pushing right up into those premium areas for staple. And with the wetter harvest and the lower grade, the gins have to work harder. But what's encouraging is even with the gins working harder, we're still maintaining those other fibre characteristics that our spinning customers need and expect from Australian cotton. So Micronair is a tough one during a La Nina because the amount of cloud cover and rainy weather makes it tough to grow cotton, and Micronair is very susceptible to those conditions. But what's encouraging is we still had 95% of the crop that was G5 Micronair. If we go back to 21, we had more of the crop that was affected by low Micronair. But what's encouraging is our farmers have responded, and we're growing the crop even in these cooler years in a way where we get it to full maturity and into that premium Micronair range. Strength is also excellent. As an industry, we've struggled with strength over the years, and the reason we have struggled is because there's an inverse relationship between yield and strength. So when the researchers are trying to improve yield, it invariably reduces strength. So what we've had to do is work very hard to produce varieties that give us the strong fibre and also the yields that we need to stay in business and be profitable. But as you can see there, we've got the vast majority of the crop is over 30 grams per text, and we've got good percentages of the crop now pushing over 32 grams per text, so really into the premium ranges. So overall, quality was very good. Grade was a little bit of a challenge, but in general, our spinning customers are getting the excellent fibre that they expect from Australia and pay for. So logistics, I don't think there'd be anyone in the room who hasn't been challenged by logistics over the last 2 or 3 years. We are no exception. It's been a very challenging period. I think you'd be going well to find an Australian cotton shipper that hasn't had a very challenging year in terms of shipping the crop that we've just been shipping in 2022. It's really encouraging though that we've still managed to ship this crop, and we're shipping it at record pace. We had a slow start to the season due to the crop being a little bit late because of the type of summer that we had, but the industry has responded extremely well to those challenges in terms of warehousing and shipping and just general capacity. So that's resulted in record shipments per month. So we see back in August, we shipped over 1 million bales in the month of August. And that included something that we'll get onto in a moment, which is the bulk vessel of cotton which LDC put out of the port of Brisbane, which was quite incredible, as you'll see a video we've got coming up shortly. We only yesterday received the data for September, and as an industry we shipped 945,000 bales in the month of September. So we were down 100,000 bales from August, but that was basically the difference of that bulk vessel. But still, to be shipping 945,000 bales in a month, close to 1 million bales in a month, is quite exceptional, and especially considering the conditions and the challenges that we've been having around logistics as an industry. And I think globally, no one's been untouched by the logistical challenges that we've faced. So I'll just show you this video. So LDC did a great job in taking on some of these logistical challenges by changing things up and challenging the status quo and taking us what some would say back in time and putting a bulk vessel out of Brisbane into Turkey, which took nearly 30,000 metric tonnes, and most of that was bulk, as in bulk break in the hold of a ship, but it also had around 200 containers placed on top of the ship. So we'll just watch that in practice. Yeah, so I think you'll all agree that was pretty impressive, and I'd like to congratulate LDC on that. I think it's a really good example of challenging the status quo, as I said, and I think in the situation we were in globally with shipping lines, container lines, and the prices they were charging and the capacity constraints we had, it was just fantastic to see someone really take them on and show them that if you want to overcharge us and constrain us on capacity, we'll find another way to do the job. And I think it was great that LDC took that on. So we can't all do that. We don't all have the capacity to do that, but we all get the benefit because it really wakes the shipping lines up and makes them sharpen their pencil and say, well, we better give these guys decent container rates or they're just going to find another way. So it was great to see. So I'll just hand over to Cliff now to talk about markets. Thank you.
Thanks, Arthur. Good morning, everybody. I think the story of markets for Australian cotton, as I'm sure most of you'd be aware in the room, is that up until 2-3 years ago, China was by far and away our major market. And as you can see on the chart here, taking close to 70% of our crop. We then, as a country, I guess, had a few disagreements with China, who then implemented a number of trade embargoes, not just on cotton. Cotton was actually one that was a soft ban. In other words, there was nothing official. It was just not allowed to be sold into China. And in a lot of ways, we're extremely fortunate because if we come back to what Arthur was saying before, in 2019, it was one of our smallest crops. So we got advance warning that we were going to have to diversify our markets. And that was fortunate because our production rebounded, but we'd had that lead time to try and work out what we were going to do. And I think it's fair to say that the Australian cotton industry has really performed a remarkable job in moving cotton to a range of markets now, diversifying those markets and giving us the opportunity to move these large crops. Naturally, part of that has come through pricing. We are now extremely competitive in the international market. But as you can see from the chart for 2022, that diversification has gone really well. And some markets there that have been our traditional markets have made a comeback. Indonesia, for example, used to be our #1 market. South Korea, names that we hadn't seen increasing volumes for quite a while. So it's been a great performance in diversification and given us a great platform for the next few years when we have larger crops. I guess that's the good story. Now I've got the bad news, or potentially bad news. You would have all seen in the international news the flooding that's occurring in Australia, not just in some of the major areas, but certainly out in our country, agricultural areas. And we've had, this is now our 3rd year of major rain, and it is going to have an impact on the 2023 production. Up until probably a couple of months ago, everyone in the Australian industry was expecting us to produce another record crop. So this year's was 5.6, 5.7 million bales. The potential for 2023 was certainly over 6 million bales. That potential has now disappeared as a consequence of the rain that we've had. The flip side to that, of course, is that now all our water storage and soil moisture levels are recharged, and we are in a fantastic position for the next few crop years. But it has given us a challenge for this crop. We should be pretty much over our peak planting period at the moment, and because of the delays with all the flooding, we're not. So it is going to have an impact on the final area that we managed to get planted, but then also the yield potential starts to decline as we move forward in planting later. Just to give you some sort of indication of what's been going on with this flooding, and it's been widespread. I think if you can remember back to the initial charts that Eimear was talking about, 66% of our crop is produced in New South Wales, and unfortunately New South Wales has been the main state that's been impacted by the flooding. And all our major valleys, cotton producing valleys, have had problems, and they're ongoing. The rain just doesn't seem to want to stop at the moment. This, for example, is the major water storage in the Guida Valley. It's the Copeton Dam, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's over 12 years since it's been full. And as you can see, they're releasing a fair bit of water at the moment. So it really has been unbelievable. For 3 years of significant rain, it is creating problems for us at the moment, but it does give us great potential going forward. So whilst we've got a couple of problems at the moment, it's certainly putting us in a reasonable position for 24 and 25 crops at least. And hopefully we can make good use of that water. Eimear?
Thanks, Cliff. Yeah, Australia it's a land of extremes. It's either drought or it's flooding. So and as we've talked about here, we get 3 to 4 years of confidence that we're going to have big crops. And obviously our yields have continued to increase over the years with the seed varieties that we're producing. So that's why we're getting to the 6 million bale crops. It's not that the area has expanded that much. It's the fact that our yields have actually increased as well. So just something to introduce you to that we're doing in Australia. We have run by the Cotton Australia team is the Cotton to Market program, where we have retailers in Australia who want to source Australian cotton to be able to label it in their products, and they've been actually able to do that. And there are 10 brands in Australia now that are managing their supply chain in order to get Australia cotton to the Australian cotton consumer. Now we're a 26 million population country, so it's not very big, but it proves that it is actually doable. We don't, unfortunately, manufacture anything in Australia, so our supply chain is 100% offshore. We export our raw cotton. It goes through the spinning mills and through the fabric mills and the garment manufacturing offshore. And these brands have been able to manage their supply chain in order to identify Australian cotton. And it's always been an issue in Australia where we a little bit fly under the radar as a cotton industry because of the issues around water consumption and pesticides, etc. But these brands are taking the story to the Australian public on the amount of cotton we can produce with less water, less pesticides, and it's really telling a good story for us. And we're hoping that this will eventually, expand into the international market as well, because these brands are proving that they can do it.
Now,
this is this is one of we put this slide up specifically for Cliff because he is a proponent of the Rod and Gun brand. So Cliff, you can explain this.
I am, and I'd like to just offer a disclaimer at the moment. I'm not being paid any sponsorship or anything by Rod and Gun, but I think this is a great example of the Cotton to Market program, and I certainly do buy a lot of their products, but over the past few years, Rod and Gun took the decision to switch a lot of their products to cotton and using Australian cotton. They do use some other cottons, and just a small plug for Supima, but they've done some great stuff. But the other really impressive thing with Rod and Gun, and I don't know how many of you have been in one of their stores, but they know the story. And certainly in Australia, if you go in the stores, they'll talk to you about the company's cotton usage. But even more impressive is that they have a store in Dallas that I went into a couple of weeks ago. Even they knew the cotton story. So I'm a big supporter of Rod and Gun for a brand that is out there promoting cotton, Australian cotton, significantly. This is what we need to see.
Yeah.
So,
and as we battle the man-made fibre issue, that, you know, when you see brands that just go ahead and do this and manage their supply chain, it's really encouraging. And we're hoping that, as we said earlier, that this will get some traction and become more of an international option for people, for brands particularly. The BMP program in Australia is basically our social license to operate, and it basically is our framework for sustainability. Growers sign up to the BMP program, but not just growers, we also have gins and warehouses that also sign up to BMP. It's best management practice is what BMP stands for. And it speaks to, it manages water usage, natural assets, energy, fibre control, soil health becoming particularly a focus for even the likes of BCI, where they're looking at how does soil health impact what's being produced, and what part of soil health makes up sustainability, what part of that story. So again, a very important program for Australian cotton. Without that, we would not be able to exist in Australia. We have a short video that will explain what that looks like.
Farming means working with nature, not against it. And the more we learn, the more we improve. Over the past 30 years, the way we farm cotton has completely changed. It all starts in the soil, where we encourage bacteria, microbes and worms to help keep our soils fertile. Combine this with low and no-till farming, crop rotations and huge advances in water efficiency, growing a bale of cotton now takes only half as much water as it used to. We're also planting native vegetation and protecting threatened species to improve biodiversity as a whole, while using natural pest management, and biotechnology has significantly reduced insecticides. Properly caring for our farms allows us to grow more cotton on less land, more than anywhere in the world, in fact. Compared to the global average, Australian farmers grow 3 times the cotton per hectare. Now, we're turning our attention to machinery powered by solar and biofuels, improving nitrogen fertiliser efficiency and capturing carbon in our crop, trees and soils to help care for the entire planet too. Our ambition is to make positive change for future generations.
And one thing I'll mention about the MyBMP program, it's the precursor to a grower being able to access BCI. So the standards that we have in the BMP program are really quite high, so we really want to preserve that standard. But through that program, they're able to access BCI. As we've seen with what LDC were able to do with the bulk vessel, necessity being the mother of invention, we have a lot of innovative problem-solving heads in Australia. And one of another initiative that's just, I think it was this season was the first time we had this life cycle return to the land. This is a video from Gundawindi in right on the border of Queensland and New South Wales, and this is a cotton grower and his solution to recycling the waste product of cotton.
At my age, I've seen that much waste in my lifetime go into landfill. We grew it here. It started from a seed here. I believe we should be able to take responsibility as manufacturers and put it back into the soils. The results of our first trial has been very successful. We've been able to see the product break down within the first 5 months. We've seen a slight lift in our microbes in our soil. But the most thing is we've been able to see there's been no detrimental effects. Instead of having landfill, have farm fill.
We know that 800,000 tonnes of textiles in Australia goes to landfill every year. It's really important for consumers and also industries and brands to collaborate and work together over how we solve this big problem for Australia. Cotton breaks down fast in the natural environment. It's biodegradable, it's recyclable, and it's got a really important place in the circular economy for textiles.
We've got a solution for that, is to bring it back here and we start a new life of a new garment back into our fields.
So a really interesting project in managing the life cycle of cotton and returning it to something that enhances our ability to be sustainable. Small project, but it has potential to improve. I think we're rapidly running out of time. We've only got about 4.5 minutes left, so I think we'll just throw it open to questions. If anybody has any questions about what we've talked about or anything that we haven't addressed that you'd like to hear. So the question on the screen is, what's the percentage of vessel cotton versus container cotton for Australia, and how's the crop size affecting vessel cotton sale? I think we're talking about bulk vessel there. Arthur, do you want to take that?
Yeah, no problem. So so far this year, there's been one bulk vessel go out, which was around 20 to 30,000 metric tonne. So it's a relatively small percentage, probably only 5%. Oh, sorry, less than 5% of the crop. So very, very small percentage of the crop has gone out bulk. It's still mostly in containers. What was that other one? How's crop size affecting vessel cotton sale? I'm not sure what that really means.
No, I think that's saying about the crop size, so how big it is, and our ability to ship it. I think the driving force behind us using break bulk was the container cost rather than the crop size, and shipping lines throughout the season reducing our availability of containers, and particularly to a market like Turkey or the subcontinent. We had great difficulties in securing freight to those areas. And what LDC did for the Turkey market was exactly what was required at the time.
We might add, obviously, that the logistics issue has eased, and we are moving over 950,000 bales in the month of September. So, you know, we're seeing that situation abate, and we're getting back to a more normalised shipping period. Any other questions?
Is there anyone out there?
Answer them all.
No, if we have nothing else to answer. I can't believe no one's even asked a question about basis. How did that happen? We're obviously competitive.
Would appear that way.
Okay, well, I think on that note, we have 2 minutes left, so we'll release you. Oh, hold on, we do have another question. Has the Ukraine and Russian war affected the cost of production? Yes, it has. It has, for sure. I think input costs, apart from the availability of certain inputs and the shipping issues, the logistics issues that reduce the ability to import, I think the cost of production certainly increased. Cost of inputs, fertilizer, but also fuel and energy costs have gone up dramatically. Yep. So yes, I think that is a global impact. I don't think it's unique to Australia. What is the percentage of BCI cotton?
Yeah, so as an industry at the moment, we're around 30% of the industry, of the cotton produced in Australia is certified BCI, and it's going up significantly every year. There's a lot more farmers that are getting certified annually, and that percentage of BCI is going up. So we're really encouraged by the grower uptake. So it's good to see.
And certainly the demand is there as well for BCI.
Yep.
as we continue on the sustainability and traceability path. What's the production estimate for 23,
Well,
Cliff?
As I touched on before, I think up until a couple of months ago, we were thinking it was going to be a record crop in 23. Today, I think most of us would agree that it's probably somewhere around 5 million bales. But as I commented on earlier, the fact that we're now planting the crop later is going to impact yield. If the weather behaves itself, we should still produce a crop over 5 million. If it doesn't in the next few weeks, we're going to be slightly below it. It's still a big crop. And again, as I said before, it also puts us in a great position for 24 and 25.
What's the freight difference, bulk?
No, no.
to
What is the percentage of fibre?
Oh, fibre in the field. I'm not sure I know what that...
Does that mean what's left?
Maybe the regenerative agriculture, how much?
Okay. I'm not sure about that actually, but if anybody wants to follow up on that project, you can see us after the presentation and we can give you some more information.
I'll touch on that next one. So the question's around whether the Australian government will interfere or come in like the US government has in terms of putting in legislation around container freight operators. I think the main thing that that the government did in the US was to legislate around the exporting of empty containers. Our government, where they will come in is if there are things going on that are regarded as being anti-competitive. So if it looks like the shipping lines are acting in a way that reduces competition and puts increased cost onto industries like ours, then the government will step in. Apart from that, our government is very reluctant to interfere in markets, and I think the US government is a lot more willing to get involved in those sorts of things than what the Australian government is.
But having said that, we were still able to export over, basically the whole of the 2017 crop in 1 month this year. So I think once the global situation became more normalised and the issues around the shutdowns in China eased, because a lot of our imports come from China, I think that went back to its natural state. What do you think that the volatility in the Australian crop size will increase with climate change?
No, I think we have volatility in our production, whatever happens.
Yeah.
As you said before, Australia's either a drought or a flood, and at the moment we've got a flood. So
yeah, we're a land of extremes. Potentially it's deeper, the climate change tends to be creating a deeper impact for longer. Maybe that's what we're going to see with this continued La Nina pattern. India and Australia discussed entering an FTA last year. When will it be approved in Australian Parliament? It's actually going through
still in the
Parliament
process
at the moment. It's still being not debated, but it's still being reviewed, I suppose. So we would expect something probably early next year on where that FTA stands. And that will be a new one for us.
yeah, but I don't think it's going to be significant for cotton. I think they were talking somewhere around 50,000 tonnes.
Yeah,
That'll depend on the market conditions. So, yeah.
I don't think it's going to have an overly negative impact on anything. Slight challenge, but we'll get over that.
China. So Australia it's ongoing trying to mend the relationship with China. The question here is, are there any discussions to mend the relationship? There certainly are. We've had a change of government recently, and that was seen as a major, I suppose, step forward, because there was a gridlock, basically, a butting of heads between our last government and the Chinese government, and it seems like with our change of government, the conversation has started fresh, and it will hopefully give potential to some renewed negotiations, and maybe we see an end to these trade barriers that have been put up.
Yeah, and as Cliff referenced earlier, Australian cotton is not banned in China. Just the issue of the quota is not allowed to be used for Australian cotton. So, that's a technicality, and we're hoping that will be reviewed and favourably for us, especially when we're growing upwards of 6 million bales in the next few years. We would like China to be one of our customers, one of our main customers again, I think.
Yep. Bulk shipment, well, I think Arthur touched on that before. Not all of us could do what LDC did. The shipment obviously was not going to a single mill buyer, it was going to a number of them. So volume and saleability is a big part of that.
Measures taken to promote sustainable cotton. Well, I think that our BMP program, Best Management Practice program, underpins basically our framework for sustainability. And all of that information is actually available. If you look at the CRDC, they issue a sustainability report. I think the last one came out in July this year. So it's a really worthwhile report to read if you want to get some more detailed information on that.
Someone's asked what made Vietnam buy a huge bunch from Australia. There's two reasons for that. One initially is the Chinese joint venture mills or Chinese investment into the Vietnamese market. So initially a lot of the Australian cotton that was going into Vietnam was to Chinese customers that had moved offshore. And now on the other side of it is the reduction in the Australian basis has made us more competitive, and we've moved into some of the more traditional Vietnamese mills as well as the Chinese mills. That's pushed that consumption and the exports to Vietnam up even more.
I'm sure LDC will be quite happy to answer that last question.
What's the freight difference between bulk and container, Tony? There is
Acknowledge the difference.
There you go.
And it must be substantial. Well, it has to be substantial given what we were paying for container freight this season.
Yeah. Well, you saw the effort that went into that. It wouldn't be done if it wasn't worthwhile. So.
Correct. Yeah. Well, thank you for all those questions. So we just want to wrap up and explain and just again talk about what we consider to be the complete package of Australian cotton. Superior quality characteristics, consistent quality, zero contamination, reliable suppliers, quick and reliable delivery time, and sustainable and acknowledged environmental marketing options. So that is the complete package for Australian cotton. If you want to talk to any of us panellists after the presentation, please do so. And thank you for your time today. And thank you for staying over the hour, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, team, for kicking us off this week with a superb oversight of Australian cotton. You now have a break. Most of you will have found the coffee and tea and drinks just over the way from the Presidio Ballroom. Please, if you wish to come back to see the Women in Cotton interactive session, be in your seats by 11:30. Thank you.